Welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about interpreting messages from spirit guides.
For those of you guys that don't know us yet, I'm Heather.
And I'm David.
From Caren.
Yes. Helping people create
badass lives. We've got a lot to cover today, so let's get right into it. This question is from Brent from here in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I'm going to get that on the screen. It says, I had a session with you guys 10 years ago. Oh my gosh.
Time, right?
And have just moved back to Las Vegas. I was going through a divorce at the time and having a hard time listening to my guides. You guys literally saved my life. Thank you.
Wow.
And helped me trust myself. Now I am reaching out because I saw your video on discernment of spirits and feel like I am back to guessing, shooting in the dark, and I really am not sure what to do next.
So if you guys have ever had any kind of a situation like this, if this sounds like you're in the right place.
So let us know in the comments if you've ever gotten what you thought was a really clear message, but then you weren't sure what to do with the information. So in the video Brent is talking about, we gave some steps on how to listen to your guides, but today I want to break down one of the steps from that video on how to assess the message and then take action. Sometimes we resist and even reject ideas that we get, messages, because they are just simply unfamiliar and we act like a deer in the headlights, right? Like, oh my goodness.
Or sometimes we jump the gun and we act prematurely out of ego or fear.
So those are two things that might happen when we receive a message, but then we act too quickly out of ego or fear, or we don't act.
Right.
So this is when it's time to stop, drop, and assess.
Reassess. So let's break down the assessment phase of interpreting messages. So we're going to get into that. Tip 1 is assessing the message logically.
So here, your initial message probably arrived in a moment of intuition and inspiration, enlightenment, and you feel really good about it. But now, slippery slope, you're questioning everything and wondering if you read the message wrong. We've all done this, right? Raise your hand.
Oh yeah, right? Definitely been there. Now it's time to assess the message logically, because that after party of self-doubt can nosedive that original excitement that you got into a spiral of fear and avoidance. If you don't understand what the message is, if you don't know what the message is, your mind is going to start freaking out a little bit.
So here is where your logical self has to talk your mystical self off that cliff because it's freaking out like, what do I do? What do I do? We want to do the right thing, right?
And sometimes the message is simply a heads up to be patient and wait for that moment. And other times it's a call to action, like right now.
So,
but don't get caught up. Don't get caught up in that I got to do it right now.
How do you tell the difference?
So I wish we could give you a simple answer, but this is highly individual. And here's a good, simple formula.
Okay, so first take 5 deep breaths.
That was one. I'm not going to do all 5.
No, seriously. If you just take 5 deep breaths when you're in that moment of, am I right or am I wrong, or was my initial? If you take those 5 deep breaths, number one, it's not a joke. It's like get you out of your fight or flight.
Absolutely, because those 5 deep breaths will literally reset that fight or flight reaction that you've got going in the subconscious mind.
So then see if your fear is logical, and this is where. Okay, so the message comes in very mystical and intuitive, but now it's time to think about and assess with your logical mind. So you're going to access your inner Mr. Spock Star Trek action in this step,
highly
right?
Logical.
Right.
and be patient. Patiently wait for that next step to show itself. You don't have to rush, because most of the time there's no big, huge rush, even though it might feel like it.
Right. And we're going to talk about when is it to be action and when is it to be waiting, so when that action step arrives, if you can calmly go into it, you're going to know it, you're going to feel it, you're going to be excited. You might be a little scared, but you're not going to be in fear or panic. Right. So you might be a little scared because new things always scare us anyway, but mostly you're going to be excited or feel peace. We're going to talk about that more too.
And when that next step shows up, you're going to have that knowing, you're going to have that feeling of, okay, this is what I was waiting for. This is what I was waiting for. I did want to address Carrie's question real quick because it is perfectly on point. Welcome, Carrie, by the way. She said, I had a spirit wake me up last night. It was a female energy and she made me feel like I had Alzheimer's or dementia. So what do I do with that? Now it's time for the bonus tip that we're going to get to before the bonus tip. So with this, that is most likely a story from the spirit itself, conveying it to you in the fastest method possible. Just take the message that it's a story. It's them telling you what their story is.
All right. That may not be a direct message for you. Yeah, I've had that experience. Usually that happens when you've got a spirit in transition and you kind of like intersect with their story. It's with those of you that are in our mediumship classes right now. We are
in C.Ht Academy.
We are going to be getting into that type of phenomenon in a couple of weeks. So Carrie, I think you're in C.Ht Academy. I'm not sure.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. But we are going to be getting to that. So heads up. Let's talk about tip number 2. Don't take the message at face value all the time.
That's why that message was perfect.
Right. Okay. Sometimes the message is a direct message. It's really easy to understand. I wish all spirit messages were like that, but most of the time the message arrives in a symbolic way or a puzzle to unravel.
And that's because the subconscious mind works in symbols, and that's where the messages are filtering from is through the subconscious mind. So it's going to be, and it's a faster method of communication. So it's going to happen that way. So here we know it's a divine message, but we might be thinking too logically and end up interpreting the message literally at face value when it may just be symbols.
So, Carrie, going back to you, you're interjecting just so kind of everybody's clear, is that the message that you got or actually what you were tapping into probably wasn't a message from a spirit guide. It was probably just you picking up on a story of a spirit that was in your space.
Right.
So the live we're talking about today are messages that come directly to you from your personal spirit guide. So a lot of times, like David was already saying, spirit as well as our subconscious mind will speak in what we call the language of the spirit or the language of the subconscious. The message that Carrie got was kind of a literal, here's my story, whereas a message from a spirit guide might be kind of a symbol for you to unravel or, you know, not as direct.
Right. One of the biggest symbols that gets misconstrued and taken too logically is pregnancy.
Okay, so I have a beef with this one.
This is one that gets misconstrued all the time.
Okay, this gets misconstrued. Every single reading I've ever had from like almost every, not every, but they'll be like, you're pregnant. You're going to have a baby. I'm sure I've talked about and ranted on this before on a live, so I apologize if you heard this again, if you're hearing this again, but it's like, I'm Gemini and I've always got a project going on. So you might dream yourself about being pregnant and might jump to conclusions that this means you're going to literally be pregnant when in fact the message, like the messages I've received from different people over the years, are that you might be entering a time when you need more self-care, you need to baby yourself, or you're starting a new project that needs to be nurtured.
Or you're stepping into a time in your life when someone in your life may need some deep care and nurture. So it may not be about an actual pregnancy. Most of the time it's not.
So with things that are messages, assessment means don't take it at face value. Tip number 2, take time to assess, is this symbolic or is it a literal message? Because often we jump to conclusions that it's literal and we go start buying baby cribs and stuff when really we're just going to start a new company. So you got to take your time and really step back from the mystical part of the message and think about it logically.
So unless your new company has to do with baby cribs, it's probably not going to benefit you to go out and buy baby cribs if you're birthing a new company. And Claudia says that it's birthing new ideas. Most of the time, absolutely.
Well, I was going to say, if I had like actually had a baby for every time I've had cards thrown down for me or somebody reading me and said, you're going to have a baby, be careful not to get pregnant, I would probably have 36 kids right now. I have 2.
Wow.
And every time I have gotten that message, my knowing was like, no, I don't want to have a child right now. I've already got a baby. So.
And I've got these projects coming up.
Right. So it's up to you to feel into the message. So regardless of who's actually giving you the message, and like I said, this is more geared toward what you receive personally, not necessarily in a reading. But do run it past your filters.
Yes.
Don't be like, oh, this is a divine message that I'm supposed to have a baby.
And these are kind of some bonuses.
Right. So it's not necessarily a divine message that I'm being directed to have a baby, which goes against your truth at the moment. Like, this isn't what I'm feeling, but I guess I got the message, so I better do everything I can do to follow through.
To get pregnant.
This is where you stop and you check yourself.
So, and this goes perfectly into tip number 3, which is don't jump to conclusions. Okay, sometimes we jump to conclusions or we get into that instant action because of ego or panic or the way the message is delivered. We get caught up in the emotion of the message itself, which tends to have a spiritual urgency that may not be valid.
And this is the tip I really want to like, talk about, because we see this often clumsily messed up in the world of spirit. So sometimes you can cause more damage telling someone that you received a message out of your ego need to let other people know that you received a divine message, that the divine spoke to you. So sometimes you got to take it, like I said, take a deep breath and think about being responsible with your messages.
Yes. And I want to elaborate on this a little bit more. If the message is intended for you to take action and take action right away, you're going to have a knowing and a feeling of peace around it and move through that action with grace. When you're caught up in the hype of it, chill the fuck out.
So stay calm, breathe deep.
Yes.
Wait for that peaceful call to action around what you should do next. And just like the pregnancy dream example, I want to talk about another common example for when we panic, when we get a message, are death dreams or death messages. So just like pregnancy dreams, dreams about death or personal messages around death might also be symbolic. Right.
So be patient and watch what unfolds. See what unfolds.
So often a death message, and we get this question a lot from people. And side note, a lot of kids who got these kind of death messages when they were kids, like I dreamed that grandma died and then she died, often will create a false belief around that I caused that death or could have prevented that death. When really children are really open to these messages, might get that heads up. And that's still what it is for you. But sometimes those kids will shut down their gift because they, have a fear that I caused it or I could have, would have, should have done something. So often a death message is simply to prepare you for what is about to happen and not a message necessarily for you to go and prevent something that's going to happen anyway.
Even if the call of action is urgent, if the action itself is right, you're going to have that sense of peace without the panic, without the fear, along with that urge to act. So don't get caught up in the impulse. Do a self-check and assess the situation, reassess the situation, take a breath, calm down. Like Claudia says, CTFO. It's one of my favorite quotes.
And I love Claudia. She's one of our good friends that's a medium, and she's a lot of this stuff I'll hear her say to her students, about her students, like, this kind of, right? Okay. Yeah. Throwing myself off this morning. So there's two different times we see people jumping to action because they've gotten a spirit message without
or jumping to conclusions,
staying calm, either from ego or from panic. So one of those things might drive your call to action when it's not time for the call to action. Take a deep breath, wait for that action to reveal itself instead of trying to force it.
And Gina says, you've got to learn how your higher self / spirit guides speak to you. Learn their language. Helps to keep a journal.
100%.
Absolutely. Get into the bonus tip now. There is no growth in the comfort zone. Every time we are directed to do something new, even if it is coming from a divine messenger, we can resist like crazy because of our human ego-based self. So we tend to avoid those new things just because they're new.
So again, take a deep breath.
And yet at the same time, people like new things.
Oh, okay. That's a whole different topic. And so take a deep breath, dig deep, and see if this is the logical part. The logical part of mysticism, is what today's about. To see if you're making up stories somewhere around what you should do or what you should not do to take this action.
Absolutely.
But the bottom line, I think, which is our bonus here, the bottom line with messages is that messages from spirit often have to do with pushing us out of our comfort zone.
And most often this is because we get complacent, maybe even lazy, or we're just unhappy, but we really want the change.
Or we're not challenging ourselves to grow enough. So sometimes we'll get this message from spirit that is kind of not pushy, but it pushes us to think differently.
It sparks our motivation to move out of that comfort zone and expand our comfort zone. With the spirit guide messages especially, you've got to keep in mind that your spirit guides have a better view of your life than you do. So they know where to push you out of that comfort zone. They know where to stretch your edges, even though it might feel uncomfortable to you in the moment. So they're really helping you to expand. So take the time to assess, breathe through it, have faith, and allow that action step to reveal itself naturally instead of trying to force it. When you try to force something, when you try to push something, it tends to create more resistance. When you allow things, it tends to create more flow. So step into that flow mode and go.
Flow and go.
Flow and go.
So
Yep.
My dad is still alive. He's turning
99.
My dad's turning 99
Mhm.
next week. Crazy, right? So he's very mystical, very spiritual guy, but he's also a scientist. For him, he was always like, listen to spirit, but then allow yourself to assess it and
Yes.
allow yourself to see if it's right for you. Breathe into it, see what you should do,
And
because you've been given a mind by the divine to use. So use that mind,
self-check.
and self-check, and then come back to the message and
Which
wait
also,
for the action.
yes, which also goes to the video that was talked about earlier, which is the discernment of spirits, how to test a message coming from spirit. And it goes the same way with your spirit guides. Don't be afraid to test it. Test your spirit guides. They have no ego. They're not going to be bothered if you test them. You just learned about interpreting messages from spirit guides, part of our mediumship training. And if you're ready to learn more, we do have some options. First, we have our Zen Ed Self-Growth Academy, where we teach our intuitive mastery courses for the professionals and for those who just want to level up their skills and increase their intuition, their psychic development, things like that.
Or the deeper work of your mental and emotional mastery and deeper healing work, such as our self-love blueprint that we did a couple months ago, our manifestation course and finding your life purpose course.
Yep.
You get all the past replays with the membership.
Yeah. So you get all of the classes, all the courses that we've already done, as well as all of the courses that we're going to be teaching. Claudia says, I'm privately coaching one-to-one with David and Heather right now for the next 12 weeks. And OMG, seriously, best decision ever. Oh, thank you, Claudia. It is so great to be a part of your process and to watch you unfold and to watch you develop and to help you on that path. So thank you for that shout out. I love it. If you like this video,
hit the like button.
If this video helped you in any way, share it with a friend.
If you have any questions or comments, I will leave them below. We would love to hear from you and get more ideas for new videos that you guys need to hear.
Absolutely. For more badass life tips,
be sure to subscribe
and click the bell to turn notifications on,
so you are the first to know
when we drop a new video
or go live.
And we know that time is a valuable and precious resource, and the fact that you're choosing to spend that not only with us, but also with you, for yourself, for your own personal development, we absolutely honor and appreciate that. Thank you so much for showing up. Thanks for showing up for us. Thanks most importantly for showing up for yourself. Thanks for watching, and
we'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one.